I took the overnight shift at the 7-Eleven on West Colfax because I'd run out of other options. Tucker's rehab bill was due in 2 weeks. My dad. 2 weeks, and I didn't have it. Not even close. I'd sold my tools first. The good ones, the Craftsman set my uncle gave me when I graduated high school. The impact driver I'd saved up for. Got maybe a third of what they were worth at the pawn shop on Sheridan, but it was something. Then I drained my savings, what was left after 3 months of part-time work and trying to keep the lights on. Called in every favor I had. Small loans from guys I'd worked construction with. 50 here, 100 there. Everyone was polite about it. Everyone said they hoped Tucker got better. Nobody had enough to actually help. The rehab place didn't care about any of that. They had a number. I didn't have it. So when I saw the hiring sign in the 7-Eleven window, overnight associate needed, immediate start. I went in and filled out the application on my phone right there in the parking lot. They called me 6 hours later. I started that night. Probably should have known something was off just from how fast they hired me. Didn't ask for references, didn't ask about my work history. The woman on the phone just confirmed I could work 11 to 7 and told me to show up at 10:45 for training. That was it. I got there early, 10:30. The lot was empty except for a beat-up Corolla parked by the dumpster and one of those shopping carts someone had pushed halfway across the asphalt and abandoned. The store sat on the corner, windows glowing white under the flat orange streetlights. Too bright, maybe. The kind of bright that made the parking lot look even emptier. Inside, I could see the roller grill turning. Hot dogs nobody was going to buy, doing slow rotations under the heat lamps. The Slurpee machine was lit up in the back corner, and the sign above it buzzed loud enough I could hear it through the glass. The whole place had that fluorescent everything on display look. No shadows, nowhere to hide. I pushed through the door and the chime went off. Too loud, cheerful. The woman behind the counter looked up. Mid-30s maybe, black hair pulled back tight, dark eyes that didn't bother pretending to be friendly. She had her 7-Eleven uniform on, neat and pressed, and she was holding a clipboard. Charles? Yeah. Cassidy. She didn't offer her hand, just set the clipboard down and motioned me around the counter. You're on time. Good. We don't have long. I came around and she was already moving, pulling open the register and talking fast. Her voice had that no-nonsense thing going on, the kind of tone that made it clear she didn't want questions. Register's basic. Scan, total, cash or card. Drawers got 200 to start the shift. You don't open it between transactions. Someone asks you to, you don't. Bathroom keys on the hook by the coffee station. Back office is through that door. Stock rooms past it on the left. Don't go in the stock room unless you absolutely have to. I nodded, tried to keep up. She was rattling through it like she'd done this 100 times and wanted to be done with 101. Coffee machine cleans itself at 4 a.m. Don't touch it before then. Roller grill stays on all night. If someone wants food from it, use the tongs, not your hands. Slurpee machine's temperamental, but it'll hold until morning. Mop and supplies are in the closet by the stock room. You'll probably need them. She moved toward the back, not checking if I was following. I followed. The back office was small. Desk, monitor, showing 4 security camera feeds. A schedule pinned to the wall with maybe 3 names on it. Cassidy's was at the top. Mine wasn't on there yet. Cameras cover the registers, the door, the lot, and the cooler section. Don't worry about them. They're just there. Just there. Right. She turned and looked at me for the first time like she was actually seeing me. Sizing me up. I'm not sure what she was checking for. Desperation, maybe. I probably looked the part. I hadn't slept great in a week. You need this job? Yeah. Bad? Yeah. She nodded. Didn't ask why. I appreciated that. Then listen close. Overnight's different. You'll get maybe a dozen customers if you're lucky. Mostly people getting gas or cigarettes. You stay behind the counter, you do the job, you go home at 7. Simple. She said simple like she didn't believe it. Okay. It stays simple if you follow the rules. That's when she pulled the card out of her pocket. Small, laminated, the edges worn like it had been handled a lot. She set it on the desk between us. Read it. I picked it up. The front had the 7-Eleven logo at the top and then a list. 7 lines, printed in that generic office font, the kind that comes default on every computer. I read through it once. Didn't really process it. Something about customers and questions in the stockroom. It was weird, but I figured maybe it was company policy, corporate stuff. I'd worked enough random jobs to know sometimes the rules didn't make sense from the outside. Read it again, Cassidy said. So I did. Slower this time. Still weird. Specific in a way that felt off. Not the usual don't steal from the register stuff. This was different. You follow those exactly, Cassidy said. Don't improvise. Don't think you know better. Don't try to be helpful or creative or whatever. You do what it says, nothing else. Okay. I mean it. Her voice got tighter. Overnight only works if you follow them. You start making exceptions, you start thinking the rules don't apply, it goes bad. Fast. I looked at her. She wasn't blinking, wasn't joking. Got it, I said. She held my eyes for another second, then nodded and stepped back. Good. Keep that on you. You'll probably want to check it during your shift. She grabbed her purse from under the desk and slung it over her shoulder. Just like that, she was done. Training over. She was halfway to the door before I realized she was actually leaving. Wait, what if I have questions? You won't. She didn't even turn around. Just follow the card. The chime went off as she pushed through the door. I watched her walk to the Corolla, get in, and pull out of the lot. Taillights disappeared down Colfax. And then it was just me. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The roller grill kept turning. The Slurpee machine hummed in the corner. Outside, the lot was empty. Not a car, not a person. Just the orange streetlights and the distant sound of traffic on the avenue. I stood there behind the counter, holding the laminated card in my hand. I read it again. The rules still didn't make sense, but Cassidy's voice was stuck in my head. That tight, serious tone. The way she'd looked at me like this mattered more than she was willing to explain. I flipped the card over. Nothing on the back. Just the 7-Eleven logo again, smaller this time, and a single line of text at the bottom. For overnight associates only. I put the card in my pocket and looked around the empty store. The bright lights, the neat rows of chips and candy. The coffee station with its stack of paper cups. Everything normal. Everything exactly like a 7-Eleven was supposed to look. Except I was alone now. Cassidy was gone. And I had 6 rules in my pocket that I didn't understand, and a job I couldn't afford to lose. I kept my hand on the card. 2 weeks until Tucker's bill was due. I could do this, whatever this was. I was reading the card for maybe the 4th time when I heard the stockroom door click. 11:17. I checked the clock on the register probably 2 minutes before. The sound came from the back, past the office, exactly where Cassidy had pointed when she told me not to go in there unless I absolutely had to. A single click. Sharp. The kind of sound a doorknob makes when someone turns it from the other side and tests whether it'll open. I stopped breathing for a second. Just stood there behind the counter with the card in my hand. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing. The roller grill kept turning. Everything else was quiet. I waited maybe 30 seconds. Nothing else happened. No footsteps, no voices, no second click. Just that one sound and then silence. I figured I should check it. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You hear something weird at your job, you go look. Make sure nobody's back there. Make sure the door's still locked. Standard stuff. I left the card on the counter and walked toward the back office. My boots made this dull, thumping sound against the tile that seemed way too loud. The aisles on either side of me were neat and still. Bags of Doritos, rows of candy bars, 2-liter bottles of Coke lined up perfectly. The kind of setup that looks normal during the day but feels a little off when you're alone at night. The office door was open. I stepped inside and looked past the desk toward the hallway that led to the stockroom. The stockroom door was shut. Plain white door, standard commercial handle, nothing special about it. I walked up and tried the knob. Locked. Didn't even turn a quarter inch. I stood there for a minute, hand still on the knob, listening. Nothing. No movement behind the door, no sounds at all. Just the hum of the building and the distant buzz from the lights out front. Cassidy had said it was locked. She'd made a point of it during the walkthrough. Stockroom's back there, you don't need to go in unless absolutely necessary, and yeah, it stays locked. She didn't say why. Didn't say who had the key or what was inside or when it would ever be necessary to go in. Just that it was locked and I should leave it alone. The door looked normal. Standard commercial hinges a little scuffed around the frame. I put my ear close to it for a second, feeling kind of stupid, and listened. Nothing. I stepped back and looked at the door for another few seconds. The click had been real. I knew what I'd heard. But the door was locked and there was nobody back there, and I had 6.5 hours left on my shift. I turned around and walked back toward the front. When I got to the counter, there was a man standing by the coffee station. I stopped mid-step. I hadn't heard the door chime. Hadn't heard anything. The automatic doors were still closed, the glass reflecting the fluorescent lights and the empty parking lot outside. But the man was there, just standing near the coffee machine, looking at the stack of paper cups. He wore a construction vest, dusty, kind of faded, the yellow-green reflective stripes grimy with use, work pants that had seen better days, a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't look at me. Didn't turn around or acknowledge that I'd just walked up. I moved behind the counter and tried to make my voice normal. Hey. He didn't respond. Just reached for one of the large cups and moved toward the coffee machine. His movements were smooth, efficient, like he'd done this 100 times and knew exactly where everything was. I watched him pour the coffee. Cream, no sugar. He put the lid on, pressed it down with his thumb, and turned toward the cigarettes behind the counter. That's when I noticed his boots. Heavy work boots, the kind with steel toes and thick rubber soles. The kind that should make noise when you walk. But when he moved across the tile floor toward the counter, I didn't hear anything. Not a scuff, not a step, nothing. I felt my stomach tighten a little. Not panic, not yet. Just this low-level awareness that something was off. The man stopped in front of the register and looked at me for the first time. Pale gray eyes, long face, kind of hollow around the cheeks. He didn't smile, didn't say anything, just gestured with 2 fingers toward the Marlboro Reds on the shelf behind me. I turned and grabbed a pack. My hand was steady. That surprised me a little. When I turned back, I saw the name patch on his vest. White fabric, black stitching. Owen Singh. That it? I asked. He nodded once. Slow. I scanned the coffee and the cigarettes and watched the register screen. For a second, I thought about checking the total, making sure it rang up right. But then I remembered the card. I'd left it on the counter when I went to check the stockroom. It was sitting maybe 6 inches from the register, the laminated surface catching the light. I glanced down at it. The edges were worn. Like, really worn. The lamination had started to peel near the corners, and the surface was covered in these little smudges and fingerprints. Thumb-sized marks, mostly, clustered around the text. I hadn't noticed that before. When Cassidy first handed it to me, I'd been focused on reading the rules, not looking at the card itself. But now I could see it. This thing had been handled a lot. Gripped hard, probably. The kind of wear you get when people hold something tight while their palms are sweating. I read the first rule again. Keep the front doors unlocked at all times. Then the second. If a customer places items on the counter, ring them up without checking the total. The third one was about receipts. Always print a receipt, even if the customer doesn't ask for one. They were specific. Weirdly specific. Not the kind of generic corporate policies you'd expect. These felt like someone had written them after something happened. Like instructions meant to prevent a very particular kind of problem. I looked back at Owen. He was waiting. Patient. His hands rested on the counter, fingers relaxed. I hit the button to total the transaction. The screen flickered for a second, and then the numbers changed. $0, 0 cents. I blinked. That wasn't right. I'd scanned the coffee and the cigarettes. I'd heard the beeps, but the register was showing 0. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could, the cash drawer slid open on its own. Just rolled out smooth and quiet. The bills and coins sitting there in their little compartments. My throat went dry. Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a bill. He set it down on the counter between us. I looked at it. It was a 20, or it was supposed to be. The size was right. The color was close. But the face in the center wasn't Andrew Jackson. I didn't know who it was. The features were wrong. Too narrow, maybe. The eyes didn't sit right. And the ink looked wet. Not like it was freshly printed. More like it hadn't dried properly. Like if I touched it, my fingers would come away green. I stared at the bill and felt my hand move toward the card without thinking. The rules were right there. Second one down. Ring items up without checking the total. Fourth one, accept payment without commenting on its appearance. I looked back at Owen. He was watching me now, not blinking, not moving. I picked up the bill. It felt normal. Dry, actually, despite how it looked. I put it in the drawer and counted out the change. My hands did it automatically, muscle memory from jobs I'd worked before. $12.50 in bills, 2 quarters. I set the change on the counter. Owen picked it up, folded it once, and slipped it into his vest pocket. Then he looked at me and waited. The receipt. Rule 3. Always print 1. I hit the button, and the register made its little grinding noise as the paper rolled out. I tore it off and handed it to him. Owen took it, glanced at it once, and walked toward the door. The automatic doors slid open. He stepped through. They closed behind him. I watched him cross the parking lot. Silent boots on asphalt. He didn't go toward a car. Just walked straight out toward Colfax and disappeared past the edge of the streetlights. I stood there with my hand still on the counter, looking at the empty parking lot, the register drawer still open in front of me. The 20 was sitting right there in the bill compartment. It looked normal now. Andrew Jackson's face. Regular ink. Everything fine. I closed the drawer slowly and picked up the card again. My hands left new smudges on the lamination. The receipt. I looked down at the register and my brain caught up. Rule 3. Always print receipts. I hit the button fast, maybe too fast, and the machine whirred and spat out the slip. I tore it off clean and held it out. Owen took it. His fingers didn't brush mine, but I felt the air shift when he pulled the paper away. He glanced at it, just once. Then he smiled. It wasn't big, wasn't friendly either. Just this small lift at the corner of his mouth, like I'd passed some test I didn't know I was taking. Like the receipt was the whole point, and everything else, coffee, cigarettes, the bill that looked wrong, was just set up. That bugged me more than the 20. More than the silent boots or the $0 total, because it meant he knew. He knew I'd almost forgotten. Knew I had to check the card. Knew I was new. He turned and walked to the doors. They slid open smooth, and he stepped through without looking back. I watched him cross the parking lot, same as before. Silent steps. No car waiting. He walked straight toward Colfax, past the streetlights, and then he was gone. Just gone. The coffee sat on the counter, still steaming. He never touched it, never even glanced at it after he set it down. I stared at the cup. The lid was on crooked, a little gap on one side where steam leaked out in a thin line. The cup had that cheap waxy shine under the fluorescence, and I could see a brown drip running down the side where he'd overfilled it. I didn't want to touch it. Don't know why. It was just a coffee. But I left it there and stepped back to the monitor. The office was 2 steps behind the counter, and the monitor sat on the desk right where Cassidy left it. 4 feeds: register, door, parking lot, cooler section. I leaned over the desk and watched the playback controls at the bottom. There was a timeline bar you could scrub back through, 30-second intervals marked in white. I dragged it back. Maybe a minute. Maybe 2. The register feed showed me standing there, alone. My hands moved, scanning something, touching the screen, opening the drawer. I took something from the air, counted out change onto nothing. My hand reached out, holding a receipt, and then pulled back empty. Nobody standing across from me, not even a shadow. I checked the door feed. It showed the automatic doors closed the whole time. They didn't open when Owen came in, didn't open when he left, except they did. I watched them. I heard the hum of the motor, saw them slide apart when he walked through. The parking lot feed showed empty pavement, streetlights, the dumpster in the corner, no Owen walking away. I stood up straight and put my hands on the counter, flat, palms down. I spread my fingers so I could see all 10, and I kept them there where the camera could catch them. If someone watched this back later, Cassidy or corporate or whoever checked these things, they'd see my hands. They'd see I wasn't pocketing anything, wasn't pulling cash, wasn't running some kind of setup. The register drawer had $200 in it when I started. I didn't count it after Owen left, but I knew it was more now. $12.50 and change meant the drawer gave out money, which meant the 20 was in there. Real or not, I figured I'd count it at the end of my shift. Write it up, honest. Let Cassidy deal with it. The coffee kept steaming. I left it on the counter, didn't know what else to do. Didn't want to throw it away in case that broke some rule I hadn't read yet. So it sat there, cooling slow, the steam getting thinner. The clock on the register screen said 11:43 p.m. I pulled the laminated card out of my pocket and read through it again. 5th time tonight, maybe 6th. The rules didn't say anything about cameras, didn't say what to do if customers didn't show up on playback. Just the same 7 lines. Doors unlocked. Ring without checking. Print receipts. Accept payment. Don't ask questions. If they ask for help, point them toward what they need, but don't go with them. Stay out of the stockroom unless absolutely necessary. I flipped the card over, same as before. Small logo. For overnight associates only. I put it back in my pocket. Nothing happened for a while. I straightened the cigarette display, wiped down the counter with a rag I found under the register. The rag smelled like chemical lemon and left streaks, so I stopped. The coffee cup sat there the whole time. Steam gone now. Just a cold cup with a crooked lid. At 12:14 a.m., the door chimed. I looked up. A woman came in, mid-20s maybe, soaked. Her hair hung in dark ropes down to her shoulders, dripping onto the tile, and her hoodie stuck to her arms like she'd been standing in a downpour. It was a Broncos hoodie, oversized with the old logo on the front. Her leggings were wet too, and her sneakers squeaked on the floor when she stepped past the entrance mat. I glanced out the window. The parking lot was dry. Streetlights reflected off clean pavement. No puddles, no rain. She stood by the door for a second, shivering. Her arms were wrapped around herself, and her shoulders pulled in tight. She looked at me, then at the aisles, then back at me. "Hey," I said. She nodded. Didn't say anything. Just walked toward the back where the phone chargers hung on a rack by the cooler. Her sneakers kept squeaking. Each step left a wet print on the tile, darkening it. I watched her pull a charger off the hook. She held it up to the light, squinting at the package like she wasn't sure it'd fit. Then she turned and came to the counter. Up close, I could see her face better. freckles across her cheeks, wide green eyes. She was shaking, not just shivering. Full body shaking like she'd been outside in the cold for an hour. "Just this," she said. Her voice came out thin and tight. I scanned the charger. $12.99. I hit total and watched the screen. It showed the right amount this time. $12.99. She pulled out a 10 and 3 ones from her hoodie pocket. The bills were damp. I took them and put them in the drawer, then printed a receipt without her asking. I handed it over with her change. She looked at the receipt. Her hand was shaking when she took it. "Does the bus still run?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" "The bus, RTD, does it still run this late?" I pointed to the window. There was a schedule taped up on the inside of the glass near the corner. Yellow paper, route numbers printed in columns. "Schedule's there," I said. She turned and looked at it, stared for maybe 5 seconds. Then her face changed. Not much. Just this small tightening around her mouth, like I'd told her something she didn't want to hear. "Right," she said. "Yeah." She didn't move, just stood there, dripping, holding the charger and the receipt. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me. "Do you know what time it is?" I glanced at the register screen. Little after midnight. "What day?" "Thursday," I said. Technically, it was Wednesday when I clocked in. Her jaw tightened. "What's the date?" "January 9th. She closed her eyes, took a breath, opened them again. "You sure?" "Yeah, you're sure." "It's January 9th, I said. "Why?" She didn't answer. She looked around the store, at the aisles, the cooler, the coffee station. Her eyes moved fast like she was checking for something. "How long have you worked here?" she asked. "First shift. Tonight's your first shift?" "Yeah." She stepped closer to the counter. "Has anyone else come in?" I thought about Owen. The coffee cup was still sitting 3 feet to my left. "Couple people," I said. "What did they buy?" I stopped. "Why?" "What did they buy?" she said again. Louder. "Coffee, cigarettes, regular stuff." She stared at me. "Did they leave?" "Yeah." "You saw them leave? You watched them go?" "Yeah," I said. I watched. Her face did something. I don't know how to describe it. She looked like I'd just confirmed something she was afraid of. "This place," she said. "Do you know what this place is?" "It's a 7-Eleven. "No." She shook her head. Water dripped off the ends of her hair onto the counter. "I mean, do you know? Did anyone tell you?" I felt my hand drift toward my pocket, toward the card. "Tell me what?" "Where people end up," she said. Her voice cracked a little. "After." "After what?" She didn't answer. She looked at the door, at the parking lot outside, at the empty pavement and the streetlights. "I was on Colfax," she said. "Heading west. There was a car. It came out of nowhere and I—" She stopped. "I don't remember. I just remember waking up and walking, and I was wet and I saw the lights." I didn't say anything. "I came in here," she said, "and you're here, and it's January 9th. But that can't be right. That doesn't make sense." "Why not?" "Because I was driving on January 3rd. She said it flat, matter of fact, like it was obvious. I looked at her, at the water dripping off her hoodie, at the wet footprints trailing from the door to the counter. "You've been walking for 6 days?" I asked. "I don't know." Her voice went quieter. "I don't know. I just know I was driving, and then I wasn't, and now I'm here." I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what she wanted me to say. The rules card was in my pocket, and I kept my hand away from it because pulling it out felt like admitting something. "I can't help you," I said. "I'm not asking you to help." She gripped the charger tighter. The plastic packaging crinkled. "I'm asking if you know." If someone told you what this is, it's just a job, I said. She stared at me, then she laughed. It came out sharp and wrong. Yeah, she said. Okay. She turned and walked toward the door. The squeaking started again. I watched her go, and I wanted to say something that'd make her feel better or make sense of what she was talking about, but I didn't have anything. The doors slid open. She stepped through. I watched her walk into the parking lot, and she didn't go toward Colfax. She went left, toward the side street that ran parallel. She kept walking, and the streetlights lit her up every few seconds. And then she turned the corner, and I couldn't see her anymore. The doors slid shut. I stood there. The wet footprints were already fading on the tile. I looked at the coffee cup, still sitting on the counter, still full. My hands were shaking a little. I put them flat on the counter again, kept them visible. She backed away from the counter, holding the charger and receipt in one hand, still dripping. Her sneakers squeaked on the tile. She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked to the doors. They slid open for her. She went through and they closed behind her with the usual quiet hiss. I stood there watching through the glass. She crossed the parking lot in a straight line, footsteps visible as wet prints on the dry pavement. She reached the edge of the lot where the streetlights started and kept going. Didn't turn left or right, just walked straight toward Colfax. Then she was past the lights, and I couldn't see her anymore. The wet footprints stayed on the tile, a trail from the door to the charger display to the counter to the door again, little puddles forming where she'd stood still. I looked at the counter. Her phone was sitting there, right where she'd been standing. Black case, cracked screen protector, one of those pop socket things on the back. She must have set it down when she pulled out the cash. I grabbed it to run after her. Maybe catch her before she got too far down Colfax. The screen lit up when I picked it up. Lock screen, no notifications, just a photo. I stopped moving. The photo showed Peggy, same Broncos hoodie, same wet hair. She was standing on a shoulder somewhere, daylight, trees in the background. She had one hand on the roof of a car. A Honda Civic, maybe. Dark blue or black. The car was totaled. Front end completely smashed in. Hood buckled up, windshield spiderwebbed, driver's side door caved. The kind of damage you get from hitting something solid at speed or getting hit by something bigger. Peggy in the photo looked exactly like she'd looked 2 minutes ago. Soaked. Shaking. That same tightness around her mouth. But it was the date stamp in the corner that made my hand go cold. January 10th. Tomorrow. I stared at it, read it twice, checked the time on the register screen. 1:03 a.m. Still January 9th, technically. Would be the 10th in about 23 hours. The phone in my hand was freezing. Not cool. Not cold from being outside. Freezing. Like someone had left it in a freezer for an hour. The kind of cold that burns if you hold it too long. I almost dropped it. Instead, I looked up fast and moved. Went around the counter and headed straight for the doors. They opened and I stepped out onto the pavement. The parking lot was empty. Completely empty. No Peggy. No one walking away down Colfax. No headlights, no taillights, no movement at all. Just the streetlights and the hum of distant traffic and the dumpster sitting against the side wall. I walked to the edge of the lot, looked left down Colfax, then right. A few cars passing a block over. A bus going the other direction. No one on foot. I stood there, maybe 10 seconds. The phone was still in my hand, still freezing. My fingers were starting to go numb. I turned around and went back inside. The doors closed behind me. I walked to the counter and set the phone down on the surface, then pulled my hand back. My palm was red from the cold. I rubbed it against my jeans, and the feeling came back in little needle pricks. The phone sat there on the counter, screen dark now. Just a black rectangle with a cracked protector. I didn't pick it up again. Didn't go back outside to look for her. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because the rules card said keep the doors unlocked but didn't say anything about leaving the store. Maybe because Owen had disappeared the same way, and I'd already learned that going after people didn't make sense here. Maybe because the phone was wrong in the same way Owen's 20 had been wrong, and I knew touching it more wouldn't help. I put it behind the counter, tucked it next to the register where I could see it, but wouldn't have to touch it. Then I pulled the laminated card out of my pocket and read through it again. Nothing about phones, nothing about customers leaving things behind, nothing about photos that hadn't happened yet. Just the same 7 rules. I put the card back. The wet footprints on the tile were already drying, fading into nothing. By the time I looked back at them, they were just faint outlines. The clock on the register said 1:14. I wiped down the counter with the same rag from earlier. It still smelled like chemicals and lemon. Still left streaks. I stopped after 2 passes and put it back under the counter. Nobody came in. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The roller grill turned. The Slurpee machine hummed in the back corner. Everything normal. Everything exactly the same. Except for the phone behind the counter and the coffee cup Owen had left still sitting there. Cold now. Lid crooked. I checked the monitor in the office, scrubbed back through the footage to when Peggy had been at the counter. The feed showed me standing alone, scanning something, taking money from the air, handing a receipt to no one, same as Owen. The door feed showed the doors opening, twice, once at 12:14, once at 12:22. But no one came through them, just the doors sliding open and closed on their own. The parking lot feed showed nothing, empty pavement the whole time. I went back to the counter and stood there. The store was quiet. Then at 1:26 it got quieter. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It's not like the background noise stopped. The lights still buzzed. The Slurpee machine still hummed, but the sound felt farther away, muffled, like someone had wrapped the whole store in something thick. My ears started to ache. Pressure building inside them, the kind you get on a plane or driving up into the mountains. I swallowed and my jaw clicked, but it didn't help. The pressure kept building. The silence got heavier. It felt physical, like weight pressing in from all sides. I could feel it against my chest, against my skin, in my throat. I put my hand on the counter to steady myself. Then the speakers crackled. Loud, sharp. The sound breaking through the pressure for just a second before settling into static. Music started playing. Pop song, upbeat, synthesizers and a drum machine and a woman's voice singing something I didn't recognize. Not old, not new. Just generic and polished and weirdly cheerful given everything. I stood there listening. The verse went by. Melody looping over itself. Lyrics about driving somewhere or missing someone or something. I wasn't really paying attention. Then the chorus hit. Charles, don't you know, Charles, don't let go, Charles, 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 my name. Over and over. Not kind of like my name. Not something close. My actual name. First name. Clear as anything. The woman's voice sang it 4 times in the chorus. Then the verse started again and my name was gone. Just back to the generic lyrics. I waited. The chorus came back. Charles, don't you know? Charles, don't let go. Charles, Charles. Charles. Same exact words. Same melody. My name repeated in this bright, cheerful voice like it was the hook the whole song was built around. My hands were shaking. I thought about the breaker panel. Back office. Behind the desk on the left wall. Cassidy had pointed it out during training. 12 switches, all labeled. One of them probably controlled the speakers. I could go back there, flip it, kill the power to whatever was playing this. I took 2 steps toward the office, then stopped. The laminated card didn't say anything about the breaker panel. It didn't say, don't touch it. But it also didn't say I could. And Cassidy had been real specific about following the rules exactly. Not improvising. Not thinking I knew better. I stood there between the counter and the office door. The song kept playing. Verse. Chorus with my name. Verse. Chorus again. I went back to the counter. Stood behind the register with both hands flat on the surface. Watched the front doors. Watched the parking lot through the glass. Watched the monitor feeds in my peripheral vision. The song cycled 3 more times. Maybe 4. I lost count. Then it just stopped. Not a fade out. Not an ending. Just cut off mid-word like someone had pulled the plug. The silence came back. Still heavy. Still pressing. I waited. My ears were ringing now. High-pitched whine layered over the pressure. Then the lottery terminal beeped. I looked over at it. Sitting on the counter to my left. Little thermal printer built into the top. It was printing. The paper feed rolled. The print head buzzed. A ticket came out slow and neat like someone had just paid for numbers and walked away with their receipt. But nobody was there. Nobody had touched it. I watched the ticket finish printing. It curled up slightly at the end, hanging from the slot. The terminal beeped again. Transaction complete. I didn't touch the ticket, just stood there, hands still flat on the counter, breathing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, checked the screen. Missed call from earlier. 6:47 p.m. Before my shift started. Before I'd even left my apartment. Dad. Tucker. I remembered it now. I'd been putting on my boots, getting ready to drive over here. The phone had rung and I'd seen his name and almost didn't answer. Because I knew what he'd sound like, knew what he'd say. But I'd answered anyway. His voice had been slurred. Thick, the way it got when he was tired or scared or using again. Hard to tell which sometimes. He'd said my name, asked if I had a minute. I'd said yeah. He'd asked if I was still trying, still coming up with the money. I'd said yeah, I'm working on it. He'd gone quiet for a few seconds. Then he'd said he was sorry, said he knew he'd messed up before, said this time would be different if I could just give him one more chance. One more. I'd heard him say that probably a dozen times over the last 2 years. But this time, the clinic had a bed. This time, he'd actually checked in. This time, the bill was real and due, and if I didn't pay it, they'd discharge him and he'd be back on the street. And that would be it. So I'd told him I'd figure it out. He'd said thanks. Said he loved me. His voice cracking on the words. Then he'd hung up. I stood there behind the counter holding my phone. Screen dark now. Call log closed. The lottery ticket hung from the terminal. The pressure in my ears started to fade. The fluorescent lights buzzed. That was it. That's why I was here. That's why I'd taken this job 6 hours after applying. That's why I was standing in an empty 7-Eleven at 1:30 in the morning with a laminated card in my pocket and a frozen phone behind the register and a song playing my name on repeat because Tucker had called, because he'd asked for one more chance, because I'd said yes. I put my phone back in my pocket. The store was quiet again, normal quiet this time, just the background hum of machines and lights. I kept my hands on the counter and waited for whatever came next. The register clock hit 2:12 a.m. exactly and the coffee machines clicked. Not the usual hum or burble. A loud mechanical click from both units at once, sharp enough I felt it in my chest. I looked up from the counter where I'd been standing for the past 20 minutes, hands flat on the surface, watching the parking lot through the glass. The machines clicked again, louder. I pulled the laminated card from my pocket and read Rule 5 for probably the 10th time that shift. At 2:12 a.m., turn off both coffee machines. Wait exactly 3 minutes. Turn them back on. Do not serve coffee during this time. I checked the clock again. 2:12 and maybe 15 seconds now. I walked over to the coffee station. 2 machines, side by side, both standard bun pour-over units with glass carafes and hot plates underneath. The left one held regular, the right one decaf. Both were full, steam rising from the tops. I found the power switches on the back of each machine, hidden behind the carafes. Flipped the left one first. The burner light went dark and the low hum cut out. Then the right. Same thing. The station went quiet. I pulled out my phone and opened the timer app. Set it for 3 minutes. Hit start and put the phone on the counter next to the register where I could see it counting down. 2 minutes, 58 seconds. 57, 56. The front doors made a sound, not the chime, not the motor, something else, a kind of compression, like air pulling inward, like the whole entrance was drawing a breath. I looked up and the doors hadn't opened. They were still closed, glass reflecting the fluorescent lights in the parking lot outside. But 3 people were standing just inside them now, single file, perfectly still, facing me. I didn't see them enter. I didn't hear the chime. 1 second the store was empty, and the next, they were just there, like they'd been dropped into place. The first one was a kid, 16 maybe, 17 tops. Lanky build, messy sandy brown hair, wrinkled t-shirt under a thin jacket, beat-up skate shoes. His face was narrow and tired, with dark circles under his eyes. He had a split lip, fresh, still a little swollen on one side, the kind you get from getting hit or hitting something hard. Behind him was a woman in her 40s, shoulder-length auburn hair that looked matted, tired blue eyes, soft round cheeks. She wore a loose cardigan over a worn top and leggings, slip-on shoes. A hospital wristband on her left wrist, white plastic with a barcode and some printed text I couldn't read from this distance. The third one was a man. Older, maybe early 50s, tall, over 6 feet, completely bald, sharp dark eyes, prominent nose. He wore a suit, slightly rumpled, no tie. In his hands he held a bouquet of flowers, roses I think, browned and wilted, petals curling at the edges, stems going soft. None of them looked at each other. They just stood there in line, the kid at the front, the woman behind him, the man at the back, waiting. My phone timer read 2 minutes 41 seconds. The kid started walking, not fast, not slow. Just a normal walking pace, straight toward the aisles. He turned left at the chips and disappeared behind the shelving. I heard a cooler door open in the back, the hum and click of the seal breaking. The woman moved next. She walked to the roller grill, stopped in front of it, and stared at the taquitos rotating under the heat lamps. After maybe 5 seconds, she reached for the tongs hanging on the hook, picked up a taquito, and placed it in one of the little paper sleeves stacked next to the grill. Then she walked toward the counter. The man stayed by the doors, still holding the flowers. He didn't move, didn't look around, just stood there with his shoulders straight and his eyes forward. 2 minutes, 18 seconds. The woman reached the counter and set the taquito down in front of me. She didn't say anything, didn't make eye contact, just placed it there and stepped back half a step, waiting. I scanned it. The register beeped, $1.79. The total came up normal this time. Actual numbers. Nothing strange. I glanced at the laminated card still sitting next to my phone. Rule 2. Ring every item. Do not check totals. I hit total without looking at the screen again. The cash drawer opened on its own. The woman reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out $2 bills, placed them on the counter. I took them, put them in the drawer, counted out her change. 21 cents, 2 dimes and a penny. I placed the coins in her open palm without our fingers touching. Then I printed the receipt and handed it to her. She took it, glanced at it once, and walked to the side. Not toward the doors. Just to the side of the counter, out of the way, still holding the taquito and receipt. 1 minute 53 seconds. The cooler door opened again, and the kid came back down the aisle. He had a bottle of water in one hand, plastic 20 ounces. He walked to the counter and set it down where the taquito had been. Same deal. No words, no eye contact. I scanned it. 149. Hit total. Drawer opened. He pulled out a 5 from his jacket pocket. Crumpled but dry. I took it, made change. 351. 3 ones, 2 quarters, and a penny. Printed the receipt. He took everything, stuffed it back in his pocket, and stepped aside like the woman had. 1 minute, 19 seconds. The man finally moved. He walked toward the counter with the flowers still in both hands, stems pointed down. When he got close, I could see the water stains on his suit jacket. Old stains set in. His shoes were polished but scuffed at the toes. He stopped at the counter and looked at me. Direct eye contact. Dark eyes, totally focused. Then he gestured with his chin toward the cigarette display behind me. I waited. He didn't say anything. "Which ones?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly to the left, toward the Camels. I turned and scanned the rows. "Filters, lights?" He blinked once, slow. I reached for the Camel filters and pulled a pack. Turned back. He gave a single small nod. 58 seconds. I scanned the pack. 875. Hit total. Drawer opened. The man reached into his jacket with one hand, keeping the flowers in the other. He pulled out a 10. Placed it on the counter. I made change. 125, a dollar bill, and a quarter. Printed the receipt. He took both, put them in his jacket, and stepped aside with the others. Now all 3 of them stood off to the side of the counter. Not in a line anymore. Just standing there. The woman holding her taquito and receipt. The kid holding his water. The man holding his flowers and cigarettes. 41 seconds. I looked at them. They didn't look back. The woman stared at the floor. The kid stared at the doors. The man stared straight ahead at nothing. I checked my phone. 34 seconds. Then I remembered the monitor. I turned and looked at the screen on the wall behind me. 4 feeds. Register, door, parking lot, cooler. The register feed showed me standing alone behind the counter. No one else in frame. Just me, turning slightly, holding nothing, pressing buttons on the register. The door feed showed the entrance. Closed doors. No one standing near them. The cooler feed showed the back section. Empty aisles. All the cooler doors shut. 22 seconds. I turned back around. The 3 of them were still there. Real. Solid. The woman's hospital wristband caught the light. The kid's split lip looked darker now, almost purple. The man's flowers drooped lower in his grip. 15 seconds. I kept my hands on the counter. Didn't move. Didn't speak. 10 seconds. The Slurpee machine hummed in the back corner. The roller grill turned. My phone timer ticked down in silence. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The timer went off. A soft chime from my phone. I reached over and stopped it. Then I walked back to the coffee station and flipped both switches. Left machine first, then right. The burner lights came on. The hum started again. I turned around. All 3 of them had frozen, not like they'd stopped moving, like they'd been paused mid-motion. The woman had her head tilted slightly to the left, mouth parted like she'd been about to say something. The kid had one hand halfway to his pocket. The man had turned his whole body toward the back of the store, flowers still in his grip, and the man was tilting his head, slowly, like he was listening. His eyes stayed forward, but his head kept tilting, right ear dropping toward his shoulder, face angling toward the back wall, toward the office, toward the stockroom door. The kid's hand finished its movement to his pocket, but instead of going in, he raised it and pointed. Straight at the employees only sign next to the office door. His face didn't change. Still blank, but his finger stayed up, aimed right at the sign, and his mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. Or a smirk. Hard to tell. I stayed behind the counter. My hands were shaking again, so I pressed them flat on the surface. The laminated card was still next to the register. The rules had been specific. Stay behind the counter. Don't ask questions. Follow the card. The man kept tilting his head, listening to something I couldn't hear. The kid kept pointing at the employees only sign. The woman just stood there, frozen, mouth open. I didn't move. The gasoline smell hit at 2:47 a.m. Not like someone was pumping gas outside. Not like a spill by the door. It came through the vents, I think, or maybe just appeared in the air itself, sharp and chemical and wrong. The kind of smell that makes your throat tighten and your eyes water if you breathe it too long. I pulled out the laminated card. My hands were shaking a little. I'd been checking the card every 10 minutes or so since the 3 silent customers disappeared at 2:15, and I was getting real familiar with the rules by now. Rule 6. I read it twice to make sure. If you smell gasoline between 2:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., retrieve 1 bag of ice from the walk-in freezer immediately. Place it on the counter. Do not move it until the smell is completely gone. Specific. Too specific. I walked around the counter and headed toward the back. The office door was open like Cassidy left it. Past that was the stockroom door on the left. Still closed. Still locked, I assumed, though I hadn't tried the handle since 11:30 when I heard that first click. The walk-in freezer was on the right. Big metal door with a pull handle. I grabbed it and yanked. Cold air rushed out, that dry freezer cold that stings your lungs. Inside were wire shelves stacked with boxes of frozen burritos, taquitos, those little ice cream bars. And on the floor in the back corner, a pallet of ice bags. 10-pound bags in clear plastic, the kind with the little drawstring tie at the top. I grabbed one from the top. It was heavy and solid and freezing through the plastic. I could feel the cold soaking through my hoodie sleeves. I turned and walked back through the office, through the doorway, around the counter. The gasoline smell was still there, thick and choking. I set the bag down on the counter next to the register, not gently, just dropped it. It landed with a dull thud, and the ice shifted inside. The smell thinned, not gone, just less. Like a window had opened somewhere and let in a little air. I could breathe without my throat closing up. I stood there watching the bag. The plastic was already starting to sweat. Little beads of condensation forming on the outside, running down the sides. Except the liquid wasn't clear. It was darker, grayish, almost oily. I leaned closer and saw it wasn't water at all. Or if it was water mixed with something else, something that left streaks on the counter. I wiped my hands on my jeans. They felt sticky. From behind me, back in the direction of the freezer, something scraped, metal on metal. One long drag, then nothing. I turned and looked. The freezer door was closed. I'd closed it behind me, I was sure of that, but I hadn't heard anything open, just that scrape, like something inside had shifted or moved. I looked back at the ice bag. The dark liquid was pooling now, spreading across the counter in a thin film. It smelled faintly sweet under the gasoline. Not a good sweet. A rot sweet. I thought about the rule again. Do not move it until the smell is completely gone. But the smell wasn't gone. It was just thinner, and the liquid spreading from the bag was wrong, and something had scraped in the freezer. I picked up the bag. It was heavier than before, or maybe I was just more tired. The plastic was slick with the dark liquid, and my hand slipped a little. I walked it back through the office, opened the freezer door, and set it back on the pallet. Right where I'd gotten it. Then I pulled the door shut and heard the latch click. I stood there for a second, breathing hard. My hands were shaking worse now. I looked at the clock on the office wall. 2:53 a.m., 6 minutes since I'd smelled the gasoline. The rule said to leave the bag on the counter until the smell was gone, but I'd put it back. I'd moved it too soon. I figured the smell would thin out on its own. I figured I'd done enough. I figured wrong. At 3:02 a.m., the voice started. It came from the stockroom, soft at first, almost a whisper. I was back behind the counter, wiping the dark liquid off with paper towels that came away stained and damp, when I heard it. Please. One word. Small. A kid's voice, maybe. Or a woman's. Hard to tell through the door. Please. I need help. I stopped wiping. The paper towels were bunched in my hand, dripping onto the floor. I looked toward the back. The office was dark except for the monitor glow. Past that, the stockroom door was just a shadow. Please, someone, I can't. The voice broke off. Then it started again, louder. Tucker Wilson, Lakewood Recovery Clinic, $4,200, due January 23rd. My chest went tight. That was my dad's name. His clinic, his bill, the exact amount. Due in 2 weeks. Tucker Wilson, the voice said again. Clearer now. Not a kid. Not a woman. Something else. Something that knew how to shape words but didn't quite sound human doing it. $4,200. You need it. You need the money. Open the door. I dropped the paper towels. They hit the floor with a wet slap. Open the door, Charles. We can help. We have it. We have what you need. My name. It knew my name. I thought about the laminated card. I pulled it out and read Rule 7 again, even though I'd memorized it by now. Never open the stockroom door during your shift, no matter what you hear. No matter what. I put the card back in my pocket. My legs were shaking. I walked around the counter toward the back, but not to open the door. I went to the supply closet by the freezer. The mop was inside, leaning against the wall next to a bucket and a jug of floor cleaner. I grabbed the mop handle. Wooden, solid, heavy enough to swing if I needed to. I walked back to the stockroom door and stood in front of it, close enough to touch. The voice was still going. 4,200. We know you need it. We know you sold your tools. We know you borrowed from your friends. We know you're desperate. Open the door, Charles. Just open it. That's all. Just once. I gripped the mop handle with both hands. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, listening, waiting. Tucker's counting on you. Tucker needs you. You're a good son. You're trying so hard. We can make it easier. We can give you what you need. 4,200. Right here. Right now. Open the door. The doorknob started to turn. Just a little. A quarter inch. Then it stopped. Like something on the other side was testing it. Seeing if it was locked. Seeing if I'd unlock it. I didn't move. I held the mop handle and watched the knob. It turned again, a little farther, then stopped again. Then it went still. The voice kept going, softer now, pleading. Please, Charles, please. We're so close. You're so close. Just open it, just this once. No one will know. Cassidy won't know. Your dad won't know. Just you and us. Just open the door. I stayed where I was, mop handle in both hands, eyes on the knob. The voice didn't stop until 3:17. At 3:18 a.m., I went back to the monitor. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if the cameras were still lying. Maybe I just needed to look at something that wasn't the stockroom door. The screen was different, not empty anymore, not showing me alone in an empty store. The register feed showed people, lots of them, maybe 20, maybe more. Packed in close, shoulder to shoulder, facing the counter, all of them holding money in one hand and small white receipts in the other, all of them standing completely still. No talking, no movement, just standing there, waiting. I recognized some of them, the kid with the split lip, the woman with the hospital wristband, the man with the dead roses, Owen in his construction vest, Peggy in her soaked Broncos hoodie, and in the back, behind all of them, was me. Not me standing behind the counter looking at the monitor. Another me, standing in the crowd, wearing a 7-Eleven uniform, but not the same one. Older, more worn. The name tag was different too. I couldn't read it from the monitor, but it didn't look like it said Charles. He was staring straight at the camera, straight at me. He raised one hand and pointed, not at the camera, at something off to the side. I followed his finger and realized he was pointing at the counter, at the laminated card sitting next to the register. Then he pointed toward the back, toward the stockroom door. Then he shook his head. Slow, deliberate. Once to the left, once to the right. Don't open it. I stared at the screen, at myself, at the other version of me standing in a crowd of customers who didn't show up on camera when they were actually in the store but showed up now, hours later, all of them holding receipts and money like they were waiting for something. The other me pointed at the card again, then at the door, then shook his head again. I looked away from the monitor, back toward the stockroom. The voice had stopped, but I could hear something else now. A faint rattling, like something shaking behind the door, or like the door itself was shaking in the frame. At 3:20 a.m., everything got worse. The voice cut off mid-word, just stopped. The doorknob went still. No more turning, no more testing. But the gasoline smell came back, stronger than before, 10 times stronger. Like someone had dumped a whole tank of it on the floor and lit a match. My eyes started watering immediately. I covered my mouth and nose with my sleeve, but it didn't help. The smell was everywhere, in my throat, my lungs, soaking into my clothes. The freezer rattled, loud, the metal door shaking in its frame, the handle clanging against the latch. Something inside was moving, or trying to get out. I looked at the clock. 3:21. I'd put the ice bag back at 2:53, 28 minutes ago. I'd moved it too soon. I'd broken Rule 6. I ran to the freezer, yanked the door open, grabbed the same bag from the top of the pallet. It was even heavier now, and the plastic was slick with that dark, oily liquid. I didn't care. I carried it back through the office, around the counter, and dropped it next to the register. The rattling stopped. The gasoline smell thinned. Not gone, but breathable. The lights, which I hadn't realized were flickering, steadied. I stood there breathing hard, hands on the counter, staring at the ice bag. The dark liquid was already pooling again, spreading in a slow circle. I didn't wipe it up. I didn't touch the bag. I just left it there. I looked back at the monitor. The register feed was empty again. Just me standing behind the counter, alone. No crowd, no other version of me. No customers holding receipts. The door feed showed closed doors. The parking lot feed showed empty pavement. The cooler feed showed dark aisles. All of it a lie. I pulled out the laminated card and read Rule 6 again. Do not move it until the smell is completely gone. I'd moved it. I'd put it back too soon because I panicked, because the liquid was wrong, and something scraped and I thought I was being smart. I thought I was done. But the rule didn't say move it when the smell thins. It said wait until it's completely gone. I put the card back in my pocket. I kept my hands on the counter. I watched the ice bag sweat its dark liquid and I waited. The smell faded slowly. By 3:40 it was gone, completely gone. I couldn't detect even a trace. I still didn't move the bag. I left it right where it was. Cassidy came back at 4:41 a.m. I heard the Corolla pull into the lot first, then the door chime, then her footsteps quick and sharp on the tile. She stopped when she saw me behind the counter. I probably looked like hell. I hadn't slept, hadn't sat down. My hands were still shaking a little and I'm sure my face was pale. She looked at the ice bag on the counter, at the dark liquid pooled around it, at me. You used Rule 6, she said. Yeah. Did you move it early? I hesitated, then nodded. Her mouth tightened. Not angry, irritated, like I'd done something stupid but expected. "Did you put it back?" "Yeah, at 3:20. She walked around the counter and looked at the monitor. She tapped the screen, scrubbed the timeline back. I watched her scroll through the footage. Midnight to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. All of it showed me alone. No customers, no crowd, no other version of me in an old uniform. She scrolled forward to 4, then 5. The footage was there, continuous, time-stamped, but it showed nothing. Just me standing behind the counter for 5 hours straight in an empty store. "There's no footage," she said. "What?" "From midnight to 5. There's nothing, just you." She looked at me. "You didn't see anyone?" I stared at her. "I saw plenty of people, but the cameras didn't." "No." She nodded like that made sense, like that was normal. She reached under the counter and pulled out a white envelope, not sealed. She set it down next to the register and slid it toward me. I didn't pick it up. "That's your pay," she said. "For tonight. Cash. Count it if you want." I looked at the envelope. I could see the bills inside through the gap at the top. 20s, maybe 50s. More than one night's pay at $11 an hour. "I'm not taking it," I said. "You worked the shift. I don't want it." She reached under the counter again and pulled out another laminated card. Same size as the first one, same logo at the top. She set it down next to the envelope. "Second card," she said. "You'll need it for tomorrow night." "I'm not coming back." She looked at me. Her eyes were tired. She'd probably been up all night somewhere else, doing something I didn't want to know about. "You don't take the money home," she said. "You hear me? You don't take it with you. You leave it here, or you throw it away, or you give it to someone else. But you don't take it home." "I'm not taking it anywhere. I'm leaving." "Fine." She picked up the envelope and the second card and put them back under the counter. Then she paused. "Actually, no. Take it. You earned it." She put the envelope back on the counter. Then she walked away, toward the office, and I heard her pull out the chair and sit down. I stood there looking at the envelope. I thought about my dad, about the bill, about $4,200 due in 2 weeks. I thought about the voice in the stockroom, the one that knew all of that, the one that offered to help. I left the envelope on the counter and walked out. At 5:58 a.m. I went back, not inside, just to the parking lot. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, that pale gray before sunrise. The streetlights were still on, but fading. I walked around the side of the building to the air pump. There was a trash can next to it, one of those big green ones with a swinging lid. I pulled the envelope out of my pocket. I hadn't opened it, hadn't counted the money, didn't want to know how much. I lifted the lid and dropped the envelope inside. It landed on top of a pile of cups and wrappers and disappeared. The sunrise came fast after that. Faster than normal. One second it was gray, the next it was orange, then full daylight. Bright and sudden and warm on my face. The gasoline smell was gone. Completely. I took a deep breath and couldn't smell anything but cold morning air and car exhaust from Colfax. I walked back inside. The doors chimed. Cassidy looked up from the desk in the office but didn't say anything. The ice bag was still on the counter. I walked over and touched it. The plastic was wet, but with normal water now. Clear. Cold. Just condensation. The dark liquid was gone. I looked at the clock. 6:03 a.m. 57 minutes left in my shift. I stayed behind the counter. A couple of normal customers came in. A guy buying coffee. A woman getting cigarettes. They showed up on the cameras. They paid with normal money. They didn't disappear when they left. At 7 a.m., I clocked out. Cassidy handed me a time card and told me to sign it. I did. She took it back and filed it in a drawer. "See you tonight?" she said. "No," she nodded. "Figured." I walked out. The Corolla was still in the lot. The sun was fully up now, bright and clean. I got in my truck and drove home. At noon, my phone buzzed. I was sitting on the couch in my apartment, staring at nothing when I heard it. I picked it up and saw a voicemail notification. I didn't recognize the number. I played it. "Hello, this message is for Charles Wilson. This is Catherine Morgan calling from Lakewood Recovery Clinic. I'm reaching out to let you know that your father, Tucker Wilson's account was credited overnight. The full balance of $4,200 has been paid by an anonymous donor. The payment was submitted electronically at 3:22 a.m. and cleared immediately. No further action is required on your part. If you have any questions, please feel free to call our billing office. Thank you." I sat there holding the phone. The message ended. The automated voice asked if I wanted to replay it, save it, or delete it. I replayed it. Same words. Same time. 3:22 a.m., 2 minutes after I'd put the ice bag back on the counter. I deleted the message. I didn't call back. I didn't have any questions. I didn't go back to the 7-Eleven. I picked up day labor instead. Showed up at the lot on Federal at 6 a.m. and waited with the other guys for contractors to pull through. Got picked up most days. Framing, demo, cleanup. Cash at the end of the shift. $11, $12 an hour. Honest work. I drove past the 7-Eleven a few times. Saw Cassidy's Corolla in the lot at night. Saw the lights on inside. Saw someone behind the counter, but I never looked close enough to see who. I understood what the place was now. What it wanted. It fed on people who followed the rules. People who were desperate enough to take the job and scared enough to do exactly what the card said. People who'd keep coming back night after night until one day they'd show up on the security monitor as part of the crowd. Another customer who didn't exist. Another transaction on an empty screen. I'd almost been one of them. But I threw the money away. I didn't take it home. I didn't let it follow me. And I didn't go back. That was it. That was the only way to win. You just had to walk away.